Hello and welcome to Speak Up, your go-to podcast for improving your English and giving your career a boost. I'm Adam, and today we're talking about something incredibly important: how to prepare for a job interview. Whether you're just starting out in your career or you've been through a few interviews before, we've got some practical tips to help you get ready and feel confident. In this episode, we're going to cover everything you need to do before the interview, how to handle those tricky questions during the interview, and finally, what to do after the interview to increase your chances of getting that job offer.
That's right. I'm Julia, and we're going to start by focusing on the first step, preparing before the interview. This is where a lot of people drop the ball, but it's so important because the better prepared you are, the more confident and comfortable you'll feel during the actual interview. So, in this first part, we'll walk you through how to research the company, understand the job description, and practice your answers to common questions. These steps will lay the foundation for a successful interview.
Exactly. So, let's start with one of the most important things you need to do: research the company. Interviewers will often ask, "Why do you want to work here?" or "What do you know about our company?" And they can immediately tell if you haven't done your homework. A great way to start is by going to the company's website. Look at their About Us section, where you can find their mission statement, company values, and sometimes even their history. Knowing this information will help you answer questions about why you're interested in the job and how you align with their values.
Exactly. And don't stop there. Check out their recent news and social media. Has the company launched a new product or service? Do they have any major projects or initiatives going on? This shows that you're not only interested in the job, but in the company's future as well. Let's say they recently launched a new product aimed at small businesses. You could mention that in the interview and talk about how you're excited to contribute to that project. It's a great way to demonstrate you've done your research and are genuinely interested.
That's a great point, Julia. Now, once you've researched the company, the next thing you want to do is understand the job description inside and out. Read it carefully and identify the key skills and qualifications they're looking for. This will help you tailor your answers during the interview to show how your experience matches what they need. For example, if the job requires leadership skills, be ready to talk about a time when you led a team or project. Specific examples make a much stronger impact than general statements like, "I'm a good leader."
Exactly. And here's a tip. When you're reviewing the job description, make a list of the top 3 to 5 skills they emphasize and match those with your own experiences. This will help you prepare specific examples for the interview. You want to make it easy for the interviewer to see how your skills line up with their needs.
Yes. And while you're preparing, don't forget to practice answering common interview questions. It's not just about knowing your skills, it's also about how you communicate them. Some common questions you'll definitely want to practice include, "Tell me about yourself. Why do you want this job? And what are your strengths and weaknesses?" When you rehearse these answers, focus on being concise but specific. Instead of rambling, structure your answers with a beginning, middle, and end, just like a mini-story. For example, with, "Tell me about yourself. Talk about where you are now, a bit of your past experience, and why you're excited about this job."
Absolutely. And don't forget to rehearse out loud. It might feel awkward at first, but practicing out loud helps you feel more comfortable with your responses. You could even do a mock interview with a friend or family member to get feedback. Finally, before we wrap up this first part, let's touch on one more thing: your mindset. Preparing mentally is just as important as preparing your answers. Remind yourself that the interview isn't just about them evaluating you. It's also about you seeing if this company and role are the right fit for you. That mindset shift can make a big difference in your confidence.
That's such a good point. Interviews are a two-way street, and going in with the mindset that you're evaluating them too will take some pressure off. All right, so to sum up this first part, research the company, study the job description, and practice your answers. Doing these 3 things will give you a strong foundation and help you feel more confident when the interview day comes.
That's right. And in the next part of the podcast, we're going to dive into how to handle common interview questions and structure your answers in a way that impresses the interviewer. So stay tuned. There's plenty more coming.
If you've been following along, you know we've already covered the first part of how to prepare for a job interview, from researching the company to understanding the job description and practicing your answers. Now that we've laid the groundwork, it's time to move into the second part of today's episode, answering common interview questions. Once you've prepared your research, the next big challenge is handling the actual questions they'll ask during the interview.
That's right, Adam. This is where all your preparation pays off. In this part, we're going to focus on some of the most common interview questions you'll likely face and how to structure your answers so they impress the interviewer. Let's start with a question that almost always comes up. Tell me about yourself. Now, if you remember, we touched on this briefly earlier. It's one of those questions that seems simple, but it can really set the tone for the entire interview.
Absolutely. Tell me about yourself is usually the first question interviewers ask to get to know you professionally. It's not an invitation to share your entire life story. What they're really asking for is a summary of your career background that's relevant to the role you're applying for. Here's a simple way to structure your answer. Start with your current role, mention your previous experience, and end by talking about why you're excited about this job. Keep it professional, concise, and focused on your work. For example, you could say something like, "I'm currently a marketing coordinator at ABC Company, where I manage social media campaigns and coordinate projects with the creative team. Before that, I worked as a marketing assistant, where I gained a lot of experience in digital strategy and content creation. I'm excited about this role because it offers the chance to take on larger projects, which aligns perfectly with my career goals of growing in leadership."
Exactly, Adam. That answer is clear and focused, giving the interviewer a snapshot of your experience and tying it into why you're interested in the role. It also makes the conversation flow naturally into the next part of the interview. Now, another question you're almost guaranteed to hear is, why do you want this job? This is where you need to connect your personal goals with the company's mission. If you've done your research, which we talked about earlier, this is the time to use it.
Yes, this is where you show the interviewer that you're not just looking for any job. You want this job at this company. A great way to answer this is by focusing on two things: what excites you about the company and how your skills fit what they're looking for. Here's an example. "I've always admired your company's focus on innovation and sustainability. I've been following your recent work on the Green Future campaign, and I think it's an incredible initiative. I'm passionate about environmental causes, and I believe my background in marketing for eco-friendly products makes me a strong fit to contribute to this mission."
That's a strong answer because you're showing that you've done your homework and you've thought about how your skills align with their goals. It's more than just, "I need a job." You're positioning yourself as someone who can add value to their team. Another classic question we need to address is, what are your strengths and weaknesses? People often get nervous about this one, but there's no need to panic. It's all about how you frame it.
Exactly. When talking about your strengths, you want to focus on those that are relevant to the job. Pick one or two key strengths and give specific examples to back them up. For instance, if you say you're detail-oriented, explain how that's helped you succeed in previous roles. You might say, "One of my greatest strengths is my attention to detail. In my previous role, I was responsible for managing project timelines, and I often caught small errors in reports and deliverables that could have caused bigger issues down the line. I believe that skill would be valuable in ensuring high-quality work in this position."
Yes. Now, when it comes to weaknesses, be honest but strategic. Pick a weakness that won't disqualify you for the job, and make sure to explain how you're working on improving it. For example, you could say, "In the past, I've struggled with delegating tasks because I like to make sure everything is done correctly. However, I've been actively working on trusting my team more by setting clear expectations and allowing others to take ownership of tasks. This has made me a more effective leader and improved team dynamics."
Exactly. You're showing that you're aware of your weakness, but more importantly, you're demonstrating that you're taking steps to improve it. Interviewers appreciate candidates who are self-aware and committed to growth. Now, another type of question that's becoming more common is the behavioral question. These are questions like, tell me about a time when, or give me an example of. They're designed to see how you've handled specific situations in the past, because it gives the interviewer insight into how you might perform in the future.
Right. These questions can catch people off guard if they're not prepared, but there's a simple formula you can use to structure your answer called the STAR method. STAR stands for situation, task, action, and result. Here's how it works. Situation. Describe the context or challenge you faced. Task. Explain what your responsibility was in that situation. Action. Detail the steps you took to address the challenge. Result. Share the outcome, ideally with measurable results. Let's go through an example. If they ask, can you tell me about a time when you managed a difficult project? You could respond like this. In my previous role as a project manager, situation, we faced a challenge when a key team member left in the middle of an important project. Task. I quickly reorganized responsibilities, took on additional tasks myself, and hired a temporary contractor to fill in the gap. Action. As a result, we were able to complete the project on time, and it ended up being one of our most successful campaigns, generating 15% more revenue than projected. Result.
That's a perfect example. The STAR method gives your answer a clear structure, so it's easy for the interviewer to follow, and it shows that you know how to approach and solve problems.
Exactly. And one more thing to keep in mind as you're answering these questions, don't forget about your tone of voice and body language. It's not just about what you say, but how you say it.
Definitely. When you're answering questions, make sure you're speaking clearly and confidently. It's okay to take a moment to think before you answer. Pausing shows that you're thoughtful. Avoid speaking too fast or using filler words like or And remember to keep your posture upright and make eye contact with the interviewer. It shows you're engaged and confident.
Absolutely. If you're doing a virtual interview, which is becoming more common, make sure you're looking into the camera instead of the screen to simulate eye contact. It helps build rapport, even over video.
So, to sum up this second part, we've covered how to handle some of the most common interview questions. Tell me about yourself. Why do you want this job? And what are your strengths and weaknesses? As well as how to tackle behavioral questions using the STAR method. And don't forget, your tone, body language, and eye contact are just as important as the answers themselves.
In the next part, we'll talk about what happens after the interview, how to follow up, send a thank you note, and what to do if you don't hear back right away. These steps are often overlooked, but they can make a big difference in how the company sees you.
If you've been following along, we've already covered two major parts of preparing for a job interview. First, we discussed how to prepare before the interview, researching the company and practicing answers. Then, in the second part, we dove into how to handle common interview questions and use the STAR method for behavioral questions. Now, it's time for the final piece of the puzzle: what to do after the interview. A lot of people think the interview ends when you walk out the door or sign off a video call, but in reality, your work isn't done yet.
That's right, Adam. Following up after the interview is a critical step that many candidates overlook, but it can make a huge difference in leaving a positive impression. So, in this part, we'll walk you through the best practices for following up, including how to write a thank you note, how to handle the waiting period, and what to do if you don't hear back.
Exactly. Let's start with one of the most important things to do right after your interview: sending a thank you note. A well-timed thank you email can remind the interviewer of your interest in the role and keep you fresh in their mind as they make decisions. Ideally, you want to send the thank you note within 24 hours of the interview. It doesn't have to be long or complicated. You just need to thank them for their time, mention something specific from the interview, and reiterate your interest in the role.
That's a great point, Adam. Here's an example of a thank you email you could send. Dear interviewer's name, thank you for taking the time to meet with me today. I really enjoyed our conversation about mention something specific, like a project or initiative. It was great to learn more about the team and the exciting work you're doing at company name. I'm very enthusiastic about the opportunity to contribute to your team and help achieve the company's goals. Please don't hesitate to reach out if you need any additional information. Thank you again for your time and consideration. This note is short, polite, and reminds the interviewer that you're still very interested in the role.
Exactly. It's a small gesture, but it shows professionalism, attention to detail, and genuine interest. And you'd be surprised at how many candidates skip this step. So by sending a thoughtful thank you note, you're already standing out. Now let's move on to the waiting period. After you send your thank you note, you'll likely enter a period where you're waiting to hear back from the company. This part can be stressful, especially if you haven't been given a clear timeline for when they'll make a decision.
That's true. It's important to be patient, but there's nothing wrong with following up if you haven't heard anything by the time they said they'd reach out. A follow-up email should be polite and professional. Just a gentle reminder that you're still interested in checking in on the status of their decision. Here's an example of a follow-up email you could send. Dear, I hope you're doing well. I just wanted to follow up regarding the position. It's been X amount of time since our interview, and I'm still very interested in the opportunity. I'd love to know if there's any update on the hiring process. Thank you again for your time and consideration, and I look forward to hearing from you. Best regards.
That's a perfect example, Julia. It's polite, to the point, and shows you're still engaged without being pushy. And just to add, if they gave you a timeline during the interview, make sure to wait until that time frame has passed before sending this kind of follow-up. Now, let's talk about what happens if you don't hear back at all, even after following up. Unfortunately, this happens sometimes. The company may have moved forward with another candidate, or there could be delays in their process.
Yes, it can be frustrating not to get a response, but if you've already followed up once, it's best to move forward. Keep applying to other positions and continue networking. Sometimes companies take longer than expected to make decisions, and they may still reach out later on. But don't put all your hopes on one opportunity. Stay proactive in your job search.
That's such great advice. The job search process can be tough, but the key is to stay persistent. Every interview is an opportunity to practice, learn, and get better. And remember, just because one opportunity didn't work out doesn't mean the next one won't.
Absolutely. And one last thing to keep in mind, whether you get the job or not, the experience you gain from going through interviews, practicing your answers, and following up professionally will always help you in the future. Every interview helps you grow.
So, to recap this final part, after the interview, don't forget to send a thank you note within 24 hours. If you don't hear back in the expected time frame, send a polite follow-up email to check in. And if you still don't get a response, don't be discouraged. Keep moving forward with your job search and stay positive.
That's right. The interview process doesn't end when you walk out of the room. It continues until you hear back. But no matter what happens, every step is a learning experience that prepares you for the next opportunity.
And with that, we've come to the end of our 3-part series on how to ace a job interview. We hope you found these tips helpful and that you feel more confident and prepared for your next interview. Remember, it's all about preparation, confidence, and persistence.
Thank you for joining us today. If you've enjoyed this series, don't forget to subscribe to Speak Up and share it with anyone you know who's getting ready for a job interview. We'll be back soon with more episodes to help you in your English learning and career journey.
Thanks again, everyone. Good luck with your interviews, and we'll see you next time on Speak Up.